It's always such a joy. I love looking around when we say, who is here for the very first time? And people stand, have the chutzpah to stand, in a crowd of 400, 500 people, to stand up and say, yes, I'm here for the very first time. I'm doing something brave and new and stepping into a community that I have not stepped into before. And what's so beautiful about it, especially having grown up in Unity, people often come up afterwards and say, oh my gosh, I felt so comfortable. When I walked in this place, I felt like I had come home. Is that an experience that you guys, yeah. And it's not because of a building. It is not because of Unity Naples being some, I can't say not being a special place, because it is a special place, but it's not about a physical place. What it's about is coming into a community of unconditional love where you go, oh my gosh, I've known this all my life. I knew that God wasn't exclusive, that one God was bigger than another. I knew that I was able to open my heart to all people, all walks of life, and to celebrate that one presence. I've known that all my life. And I stepped into a community that celebrates that worships in that way. And so we feel that warmth in us coming forward. Say that you and I were the only people in this room, just you and me. And we were walking down the aisle. You were coming down the aisle, and I was coming this way on the aisle. And when I saw you and you saw me, we recognized that we actually saw each other. But in that moment, as you were coming forward, I dropped my eyes, and I stepped to the side around you, or I turned around and walked away from you. Would you think, wow, she's warm and fuzzy. I want to hang out with her. You'd feel cold, wouldn't you? Because in that moment, I would not have extended the warmth of God within me towards you. And that's what friendliness is about. Friendliness is a virtue that we came loaded with, only we're the ones that filter where we'll apply it and where we don't apply it. And so today we're being encouraged to really be present to this warm way of being that's within us. It doesn't mean you expose yourself to negative things. It means that you carry the light, that you are everywhere you go, and that you do it no matter what. And that's what the call is. That's what Jesus asked us to do. You are the light of the world. Don't stand on that hillside and hide it under a bushel basket. Be that light. Feel that warmth flowing through you. Be interested in those around you. Care for those who are around you. And are they going to look different? You betcha. Are they going to be different? You betcha. We are these amazing cells, very different from one another in the one body of Christ consciousness by whatever name. And when we're comfortable, sometimes we dive more deeply into relationships in certain ways, and that's great. That's having healthy boundaries, healthy ways of being, because we can't just be out there all the time. We are the ones who channel that energy, and sometimes we're so comfortable that we can share. This is a community I've seen and witnessed sharing with one another, sharing happiness, sharing sadness, sharing times when we feel lost, and then when we share that time of feeling lost, it just returns to its native nothingness, and we find out that we're really found. How are we found? We're found by being seen as who and what we actually are. So it's absolutely vital for us to go forward with this virtue in our minds and hearts, because friendliness lifts and inspires and supports the quality of our human experience. I'm a proud graduate of MSU. Make stuff up. Yes, I am. And so I made up a mantra. My heart needs care as much as my body needs air. Yeah. My heart needs care as much as my body needs air. And I recognize that as a human being and a divine being, because I'm all that at once. Friendliness involves and requires us to have that breakthrough through crystallized thought strata that's held us apart from each other to the place where we recognize each other as brothers and sisters. And it requires inclusive thinking, inclusive speaking, inclusive ways of acting. It doesn't just happen. And we begin by employing, using that airplane oxygen mask theory. Not just a theory, is it? Right? That when everybody knows it, you know that way of being just as much. Have any of you listened to the preview? I don't know what they call it. There's the preview that they do. They have to stand up there by regulations, FCC regulations, and show you the seatbelt. Do you guys still watch that? And you take the metal buckle and insert it into like this, and everybody goes, oh, that's how we're supposed to do it in our car. I was putting it around my ankles all this time. And then what is the oxygen mask is that it drops down. It's provided for us. It just drops down. Everything is provided for us by the presence of God. It just drops down. And where do we put it first? On ourselves, so that we, opening our hearts, our minds, breathing the breath of God, can then impart that and share that with others, right? This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, seek ye first the kingdom. And then everything else it just flows. Open up the divine flow in you, and then you can move that, offer that to others so that they will feel fully supported. That's what friendliness is about. In the French novel Le Petit Prince, which was written in 1943 by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, in chapter 21 it says, Voici mon secret. Il est très simple. This is my secret. It is very simple. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. That's right, we can't see the air that's being supplied for us. And yet it is all around us. And if you can see the air, it's time to put the mask on. God's presence and power is around us all the time. And what's being encouraged today is that when you feel cold toward another, you feel like stepping around, you feel like turning around, because there's old Talmudic law that actually says that's how we're supposed to be toward one another when we're having hard times. It wasn't long ago that people were acting like that. In fact, perhaps yesterday, you had that feeling. When you're feeling cold or somebody is feeling cold out there, it's an opportunity to go where it's warm, in here. And let that so inform your life that you recognize your brother, that you recognize your sister. From the Course in Miracles. When you meet anyone, remember it is a holy encounter. As you see him, you will see yourself. As you treat her, you will treat yourself. As you think of him, you will think of yourself. Never forget this. For in him, in her, you will find yourself or lose yourself. Only appreciation is an appropriate response to your brother. Gratitude is due her for both his loving thoughts and her appeals for help. For both are capable of bringing love into your awareness, if you perceive them truly. Friendliness. Can it be a challenge to practice? Friendliness? Yeah. So you guys doing this with your heads? Because I can't see everybody's heads. Are you doing that? I just want to say to you, I'm doing dispel a myth. Actually, that's an old story that we've told ourselves that has kept us out of sync with each other, that has kept us thinking that we could be hurt by one another. Have we been hurt? Yes. We've continued to believe that this is so, and yet we're here to lift each other up, and sometimes that it means we go through tough spaces, because in order to look and see with our hearts, you and I are given everything and everyone that we need. And it always has a positive effect. You know you're succeeding when you smile when something breaks. You know you're succeeding when you feel no regret, when you mess up. And you don't blame someone who seems to have done that in front of you. In fact, you give them the benefit of the doubt. We know we're succeeding with friendliness when we greet one another, even in a silent greeting. Everybody isn't to be approached. But in a silent way, we greet them. We greet one another in namaste. The Christ in me, the light in me, beholds, it sees, I gotcha, right there. I gotcha. I see who you are. You're not deceiving me. I see you as the light of the world. And sometimes we just drop things, and there are those who will reach out to us. Jackie Johnson resonated with this virtue, and every week, we have this opportunity for you to, if you'd like to sign up for a virtue that resonates with you, and it's been a wonderful thing for all these weeks. But Jackie Johnson has a story that she wants to share with us about friendliness. Please.
I claim the virtue of friendliness, for friendliness is next to godliness, and that is how I live. I enjoy helping others as well as being open to allow and accept others' help. So I have a little story about friendliness. Several years ago, I was coming home from my Christmas holiday in Atlanta, and I was bringing a bunch of bulky Christmas presents with me that barely fit in my carry bag. In fact, I stuffed them in my pockets and was really hoping that my things would stay in the pockets of my carry bag. So here I was. In one hand, I had a teddy bear in a big, large plastic bag. And then in my carry bag, I had all these things, shoes, hairbrush, I can't even remember everything, stuffed. And I mean stuffed in my carry bag. So I get onto the train to take me to the gate. And as I exit the train, things start to fall on the ground from my carry bag. And a lovely lady behind me was picking up my things and laughing, and she was very friendly, and I thanked her. So then, here I'm going through the airport to get to the gate again, and a trail of shoes and other things start falling out of my carry bag again, and this wonderful, amazing woman sees my trail behind me, and she begins picking up my things. Together, we were laughing, and I was saying to myself, oh no, this is an awful first impression. But friendliness was creating a most wonderful opportunity to create a lovely connection between us. She was so helpful, and we got to the gate. We sat next to each other talking, laughing, knowing that we were sharing the same place. We were both going to Naples. It was time to board. And again, everything began to scatter all about, and that wonderful friend was picking up things behind me, including the things I was dropping on the plane as I boarded the plane. We actually sat right next to each other in the aisle seat. And we were just amazed by this divine connection, and we started talking and found out that Sandra McGill was a special friend. And that day, I was blessed with meeting Lisa Greenlow, who shared the joy of the journey as she picked up my falling things and the trail that I was leaving behind me through the airport and on the plane. It was the virtue of friendliness that brought us together.
So, and then they found out they both go to Unity of Naples, and Lisa Greenlow's on our board, and boy, don't you want somebody behind you picking up all your things as you travel? Friendliness has been, it's been a virtue, of course, since the beginning of time. In the mid-1800s, George Eliot wrote this: "Oh, the comfort, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but pouring them all out, just as they are, chaff and grain together, certain that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. This is the pattern that Jesus gave us. It's the pattern that all master teachers give us. Therefore, it's the pattern that Christ in you, your hope of glory, has for you always. It is that wondrous way of knowing, like Jesus did, that everyone has something to offer. Our gifts, our spiritual gifts, some of them are articulated in scriptures. And it's that we all have different gifts, all that we would witness those gifts. Jesus, the master in you, is able to see through the disguises of roles, greater and lesser, small and big. The disguise of different colors and different cultures and different languages. Because Jesus knew that the kingdom is constantly revealing itself, and from that stance of loving himself so much first, that he knew the Father, the Abba of me, the mothering essence of me, that essence of God and I are one. From that knowing, which is what is offered to you this day, from that knowing there is no wrong or right. We're living in a Rumi-esque field. And that's the place where we truly meet one another. There is in that place no deficiency, no sense of smallness, and no belittling, for we're too big to belittle. Jesus was an omega friend, and he was spoken of in Mark 10:21 in this way. And Jesus beheld the man, and looking at him, loved him. That's all it takes. Not even a word needs to be spoken, but to behold one another. Jesus was asked in the Synoptic Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, is asked, and here it is in Matthew 22, what is the greatest commandment? And his reply was very simple. Love the Lord your God. Your divine connection with all that is, not someone else's. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your mind, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. Give yourself to the Lord of your being, and being lifted up in that way. Can I have a drum roll? Love your neighbor as yourself. Wow. So here's the deal. People respond to how you behold them. If you see them as less than, they will perceive themselves in that way. If you see the light of God in them, even if they are in darkness, they will know that they are the light of God, and that it's safe to shine in that place. I experienced this the other night. Kristen and Christy are staying with me. And on Thursday night, I had just met Christy for the very first time. And I cooked I'm going to say it was a delicious meal. I did almond-crusted cod for the first time and sugar snap peas, and it was a great meal. And we went out on the lanai, and we lit candles, and we had this beautiful meal. And I felt instantaneously this friendliness, this open-heartedness into which we spoke, shared experiences in a different time frame, and yet, we even found out we have the same birthday, Christy and I. It was like, oh, man, how are we going to celebrate this year? We went from the meal to my meditation room, which is also a yoga room. And we just started rolling our fascia on balls and talking and laughing and just hanging out and doing that sister thing, So fun. It was just so delightful. We imparted things in that moment and in that time that we hadn't shared before. And then my wheels just fell off. That's what my kids call it. I get to the point where I've got all this energy, Energizer bunny, boom, and I'm gone. And I passed out on the floor of the meditation room. And the next thing I know, Kristen picks up the top of my body, and Christy picks up my legs, and they carry me into the master bedroom, which is my bedroom, thank you, God. And they place me on the bed, and I hear Kristen in the fog, foggy voice that I'm hearing. She says, just roll her in there. So they just roll me in there, and I feel her taking my jewelry off and covering me up, and boom, I was out like a light. That kind of openness was there. It's here. And I have a dog, this dog named Angel. And guess what Angel was doing that entire time? Beholding us. Seeing us through a dog's perspective. Remember years ago they said, dog is just reverse, it's God, in disguise, right? We know that unconditional of the Lord. There's an anonymous quote that is about what you can do when you want a friend. And the quote says, be the person your dog thinks you are. Right? That's what we want to do. Your dog is godlike, and you may not have a dog. You may not even like dogs, but it's that persona inside you that thinks, that knows that you are made of God's stuff, that you deserve love and affection and loyalty. Your dog is a unity member. Your dog does not care what your background is, doesn't care how many times you've fallen down or what you've said or done. Your dog adores you like God loves you no matter what. Your dog believes in you, trusts you, sees you for who and what you really are, loves you unconditionally. And so this week, as you put on the oxygen mask, see yourself through your dog's eyes. And then be that in your world as you move that forward. It's not difficult. We've only told ourselves it is. Albert Einstein said the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. Do I have time for a story? Yeah. This is a true story. Paul Villard lived in the Pacific Northwest in a small town near Seattle. And his family had the very first telephone on their neighborhood, in their street, in their neighborhood. And he was a tiny little guy, but he was fascinated by the person who lived inside the telephone. Because when called, this person would simply say the word information. So he thought this was a woman's voice, that her name was Information. One day, his mother was away just momentarily. She'd gone to the neighbors for something, just to borrow something, and Paul hurt himself. And so he had the thought of what he ought to do. So he got a footstool, and he dialed that way that he had seen his mother dial, and he heard that familiar voice inside the phone say to him, Information. And he said, I've hurt myself. And this female voice said, what is your name? My name is Paul. Where's your mommy? She just went to the neighbors. She'll be right back. Well, Paul, your mommy's going to be right back. And everything's going to be fine. I want you just to stay on the phone with me until your mommy walks in. And just in that moment, his mommy walked in, and all it was heard on the phone was a click. For years, Paul Villard called that number. All through his elementary school, all through middle school, he would call. If he had a math problem, he called Information. He called when he had a geography problem or he wanted to know how to feed chipmunks. He would call that number, Information. It was always the same voice, and they would have this conversation. When his canary died, whom he loved so much, he was all asunder. And he called Information. The voice inside the phone said to him, Paul, always remember, there are other worlds to sing in. It's going to be all right. Soon, Paul's family moved to Boston, and he missed hearing that voice within. He missed the care, the understanding that was imparted to him. And years later, when he went to Seattle, he called the number again. And he heard the same clear voice, It seemed a little cracked now. But the voice was there. Information? And Paul said, you don't know who I am. But I started calling you when I was really little, and I felt connected with something I'd never felt connected with before. And I want to thank you so much. The voice said, is this Paul? He said, yeah, it is. She said, my name is actually Sally. And Paul, you can call me anytime you want. 3 months later, he called, and a different voice answered the phone. It was still a female voice, and it said, information. And he said, may I speak to Sally, please? And the woman on the phone said, is this Paul? Sally said you would call. Sally was really ill when she talked with you last, and she has passed. But Paul, Sally left a note for you, and I want to read it to you. Paul, remember, there are always other worlds to sing in. It's going to be all right. Your friend, Sally. You and I are like Paul. From the time we were tiny, we knew how to position ourselves to commune with the divine, to be able to hear that inner voice, and you know how to do it today. And there is no one and nothing that can take that power from you. So this week, as we go out, I encourage you to extend your friendliness. And if you will, hold your hands before you. And I'm not doing this as a metaphor. Hold your hands before your eyes, if you will, please, now. This is the truth. Look at your hands. These hands before you are God's hands. These are the hands that God has given you to reach out, to touch, to lift up, to carry, to help others, to pick up their stuff as they run through the airport or onto a plane. These hands before you are God's hands, really. Not a metaphor. Touch your heart, if you will. Just go ahead, touch your heart, not your neighbor's. This is God's heart. You feel that beating? That's the flow of love through you. And you're meant to use this flow. You're meant to share it with others. And so thank you, God, for your friendliness, your ability to tap into the love of God that's within you. It was put there for you to use, first for yourself. Let that flow just fill you. And emptied of self, help others. For God is just being God through you. God bless you.